Hey, welcome. I'm going to give you a walkthrough of my latest journal. This is the Flexi Sketch by Global Arts Company. Let's see, it's the Flexi Sketch by Handbook Journal Company Global Arts. And it is not it's not watercolor paper. It's very thin. It's intended for drawing, but I'm going to share with you what I used it for. Like so many of you, I often buy journals and don't fill them up or don't use them, and that was the case with this one. I started it in 2021, so these first pages were from 2021. This is why I always recommend that people date their work in their journals, because I wasn't dating the pages, but I was able to figure out when it was because I found one from March 30th, 2021. As I said, very often we'll buy journals with the best of intentions, get a few pages in, and put it on the shelf. And that was this little journal's existence until March 2024. So March of this year, I pulled out this journal and started playing with it. One of the first things that I did, just some silliness, monkey business, I did some of my drawn to gratitude style of lettering. And so these are where I take words and I connect them and interweave them on the page and add doodles to them. I'll link below to the full class so you can get the idea and start to practice this if you're interested. Oh yeah, I had a couple of those. I started playing with, because this is very, see how thin this paper is? It works okay with the glaze pen, but watercolors, it's not watercolor paper, so it won't stand up to the amount of water that I like to use. And I just kept doodling in it. And then something happened, and this was in April, and I started trying to draw some of the flowers that are outside when I have my morning coffee. And you can see April 6th. I could listen to things. We had the full solstice. We were in the path of totality. So this was the day after. Added things like that. I had some pages that had some words on it, but I went back and kind of graffitied over them. Made some notes about a book I was reading. And this was all as we were finishing the spring iteration of Creative Meditative Flow. And then something changed in this journal. This is when I started thinking about redoing my Doodle Flowers course. And so in March 4th was the first time you see the flowers show up. Just flip through and I started playing with flowers in my little, I call this an experimental journal. So just playing with what might it look like. So I'm like, oh, we could do flowers that are frames. How would I teach it? We would learn different shapes and how to adapt those. I started playing with, could I teach something that's a format, like a formula, where you're like, oh, it goes around the edges and we have flowers opposite each other. So I kind of explore that. Started playing with what might it look like to have a little grouping of little pots. What might some doodle flowers look like? And then every now and then I'll go back to that drawn to gratitude style of lettering. So this says inspiration exists, but it has to find you working. So that's a Picasso quote. And then just continuing to play. I'm working on something for the Guild calendar. And again, like, see how these ideas come back. So that's what you want to have in an experimental journal. Sometimes I'll do a little writing, letting my mind and my creativity show up here. Now this is not something that I teach in the course, because this is a style. Not many people are drawn to this type. They seem to be more drawn to things that are like beautiful, have a certain aesthetic, and not all of my stuff does that. I like colorful, funky things. So I let this one kind of play. I'm like, oh, we could add words in the tree trunk. And then I came into, okay, let's really get serious about those doodle flowers. Perhaps we have repetition of things, testing out some tools, trying some simple layouts. Still haven't finished that guild pattern. And then I started thinking about like, well, if we're doing flowers, we should have some leaves as well. So I started playing with some vines, really funky doodles on the flowers, playing with different color schemes. So yeah, so I just wanted to give you all a little flip through so you could see what this looks like. Basically what you do in an experimental journal, it's a little place to settle in each day and kind of do what shows up. Sometimes I'll have a journal and I'll do the same thing throughout, like I did in my the Mindful Doodles class, so that type of journal. But this one, you can see I was very focused on creating different types of flowers, but then as other things would come up, like this page was on the anniversary of my sister's passing. So I was doing a little processing, so have some writing there, testing out ways to teach people how to do what I do, playing with some lettering. Sometimes one of the other things I love to do in my journals is collect quotes. So I absolutely love to just put those in. Again, more of the journaling and the vines. And oh, this was another one. We practiced doing this in the class, just playing. So I just wanted to give you a flip through so you could see what it is I do. Some of you that follow me on Instagram, you see where I'll have this out in the mornings and just play. This is kind of interesting. So just to see how far we are in the journal. So over halfway through, something interesting started showing up, and it was these lines. So I would draw something and then I'd draw around it, leaving that little river of white and then the horizontal lines. And I got quite interested in that. Still working on our Doodle Flowers class. I would make notes in here as well as I'm trying to learn to draw or putting things together for the class. So I'd make notes. Sometimes, again, a quote that I want to remember. Check this out. Those little lines are starting to show up. I really like those. Playing with a monochromatic, coloring in. Oh, I tried to do this. I get obsessed. I look at some of the people who do that like daily life journaling where they just look at what's in front of them and draw it. So I was like, oh, well, let me just draw some plants. So this was my Monstera. And then, so this was always really hard for me to learn to look. And so I like to balance something that's hard with something that's familiar. So the familiar part is I do love words and things on it. So after I would do something really hard, I was like, oh, well, I could just write and learn about the flowers. So we could do that. Again, here's one. Really was working on trying to practice perspective. And you can see it's kind of awkward playing with it. Again, trying to draw little plants. And then I moved into this phase where I was drawn to just making marks on the page. So little marks, maybe some flowers, big words. Playing with these were watercolor pencils, so I loved those. And then bringing all that color into it, and then something that's a little more monochromatic. And then the drawn to gratitude lettering style with all the colors. Normally I don't do that, but I thought I just want to play with everything. So these, again, I'm using my 3 favorite watercolor pencils and put that all together. Another one trying to draw a plant. Calming my mind with doodles, just calming my mind. Oh, look, this one is, these are the glaze pens, so you can see how shiny that is. And there's one, oh, what's unique about this one, there's a clear glaze pen. I used some colorful ones and the clear one on it. Again, those horizontal lines showed up. Oh, I love this one. This one is the opposite of what I normally practice. So normally I do the vines in the green. So this one I wanted to have a more of a fall color. So I did the orange and the turquoise. This was something, if you saw my 100-day projects, I became very familiar with these two for the first 20 days. Then I also, on this one, was exploring the mother method where I would take these two, and I knew I could take these two and kind of make a greenish color. So everything on this page was a combination of using the orange to mix into the blue, into the turquoise, and the orange into the green. So it's kind of exploring what that is like. Calm myself down again. Oh, and by this time I've practiced it enough to where it's become like the little paper cutout style. I love doodling those so much. Then I started playing with it with large letters. Then I would play with it with the vines. And this is one thing that I want to share is I find things comforting and I will repeat them. So for this one, this is my favorite vine, like this little pattern to make. I love that. And then I've also loved making the horizontal lines. It's very repetitive, very meditative for me. And then I also love adding in the cast shadows. So these are 3 techniques that I love so much that this is a very calming page for me. And then adding those things together again, taking in a quote, practicing some lettering, black and white cutouts, playing with the souffle pins and the cutouts. And this one was really working with the idea of using the cast shadows and how to draw things so that they overlap. That was something that I learned in the circles that I'm practicing, because sometimes if you just miss one line, it really throws it off. So I'm practicing that. Let's just bring it all together here. So we've got this nice chunky letters with the horizontal lines, practicing mixing together, really going back to, I love orange and blue together for some reason now. Practicing my lettering. And this was the final page where just kind of bringing it all together. And so that, my friends, is, so this is a little walk through my experimental journal. This is 5 months of daily practice and exploration. All right, friends, so if this video was helpful for you, I would appreciate if you just go ahead and give it a like or subscribe to the channel. I have linked in the description the lettering class, which goes through this style of lettering. And then I've also listed a couple of my classes if you want to dive deeper into lettering. There's a Doodle Lettering and the Doodle Flowers course. Check those out and leave me a comment if you have questions, and I'll be glad to answer those for you.